Hey, welcome to today's episode of Entrepreneurship Simplified. My name is Keith Hevlin. I have with me my friend and guest, Doug Milbauer. Doug, thanks for joining me, man.
Thanks for having me, Keith.
Absolutely. So I met Doug at the Innovation Center here in Corpus and got to be friends and have played around working on some things. But he's a little bit older than myself and has many, many years of entrepreneurial experience. So I wanted to get him on as a guest and really just let you kind of share your experience with the people that watch and listen to this. So I'll let you just kind of take it away from here.
All right. Well, I appreciate that. Thanks very much. And I'm not sure what you meant by many, many years and a little bit older, but we'll just assume that I'm just a tad bit older than you.
Tad.
Tad, yes. Um, so you wanted me to start where? At the beginning?
Start at the beginning. Start at like what made you do it? What made you pull the trigger and say, "Hey, I'm gonna go work for myself"?
Oh God. Well, I guess dropping out of college probably was my first clue that, that I needed to go do something else. Um, but no, I landed in Austin, Texas back in 1982, and about the time you were being born, I think.
Sure,
And
sure.
and Austin was going through a renaissance at the time, a big upheaval, real estate wise, tech wise, and of course it's 1982, so
Yeah, tech,
the internet
tech.
is still in diapers, right?
Sure,
But so I ended up there, didn't really have a job. So I got a job working at a bank and bumped into some people who were doing real estate. And I'm listening to, they're in commercial real estate, and I'm listening to what's going on in Austin, and things are selling dollars per square foot. Raw land
sure.
selling dollars per square foot and sometimes dollars per square inch. And I thought, I'm working at a bank, right? Which isn't the most highest paying job in the world. So I'm thinking this looks pretty good. So I went and got my real estate license and started working for a company, leasing property, and ended up making friends, befriending the two brokers there. They've been doing this for a long time. And they would decided they were going to spin off and go do their own gig and asked me if I wanted to join. And, not knowing any better, I said, sure, why
Sure,
not?
why not?
My ADHD kicked in and
Sure.
there I was. So there I was. I mean, there was three of us and we were hawking commercial real estate. We're managing, leasing, brokerage. We did that for a few years and made a little money doing that. And then probably about 3 years into that, I got an opportunity to actually come to Corpus Christi. And I started my second business here. So I'm in Austin. I've got a house there. I'm in Corpus. I have a house here. I've got a business in both places. And I spent my whole week driving back and forth. Probably
Jeez.
not the smartest thing in the world,
Sure,
right?
sure.
And the business I started here was not real estate. And I actually had no idea what kind of a business I was getting involved in. And but I did that. I did it for a couple of years. Got somebody who was willing to buy me out here in Corpus, and I took it. Got back in Austin just in time for the real estate economy to implode in
Sure.
Austin in about 1986, 87. So there I was. I went from working at a bank, owning two companies, to now I was like unemployed.
Right.
Uh,
I've been there.
Back and got a job. I got a job. I leveraged myself. But I'll tell you what, this is about entrepreneurship, right? Probably the biggest lesson I have learned through all of this, and I've done 11 startups. Okay. So I know this is a podcast and there's only going to be about 4 minutes of this into real usable dialogue. But so one of the things I learned along the way, looking back, is I learned to pivot, basically to leverage, to take what I had learned, good, bad, or indifferent, right? All the lessons, and then leverage and pivot myself into something else. So I came out of those implosions and then ended up back in commercial real estate for a few years. And then I got an opportunity to go do some consulting over in Greenville, South Carolina,
Okay.
also in real estate. So I took that gig and I was there for about 3 years. I tend to stay in places about 2 to 3 years, Key. So I was there for about 3 years. That company ended up getting bought out. But before it did, I did my first entrepreneurial venture. Okay.
Okay.
So I actually started a company within this company.
Okay.
So I cramped up $1 million operation with me and an admin. Um, and because we were doing this within the company, I mean, we kept all the nice benefits that most entrepreneurs don't get, you know, out of salary and all that other good
Sure.
stuff. But so I did that for a couple of years. Then they ended up being acquired, and the acquisition company was a larger company, and it moved the whole operation from South Carolina to Colorado. They did not invite me to go, so there I was again,
Unemployed.
and as luck or God would have it, two guys walked into my office in South Carolina about a month before all this happened and said, "Hey, we're looking for somebody in Dallas to help us do what you're doing here for these folks. If you know of anybody, let us know." So obviously, when this all imploded again in South Carolina, I'm on the phone, I'm talking to them, and the next thing I know, I'm moving to Dallas. So I'm in Dallas, I'm working for this company, and 2 years later, they get bought out. And
Note to
so
self: if you're working for a company and Doug comes on board, it's over. Like they're getting
that's
bought
it.
out.
I mean, well, it's a good ownership should bring me on board because they get all
Right.
kinds of buyout offers if I'm there. They just don't
Absolutely.
include me in the leverage part of that.
Sure. Sure.
But so I'm unemployed again, and I'm saying I'm really tired of this yo-yo. So I started a construction company. Okay, so one more business that I really didn't know a whole lot about. I had two brothers that were in construction, and my grandfather was in construction, but I wasn't ever really in construction. But I thought, what can go wrong,
How hard
right?
could it be?
How hard can it be? So residential remodel. I started out doing residential remodel, did that for a few years, and we did pretty good. We ended up doing some commercial work, and then the hurricanes started hitting, right? And I ended up taking a bunch of my crew from Texas, and we went down to Florida, and we started working hurricanes for FEMA and the Army Corps of Engineer. Again, we were
Sure.
young and wild, and we just jumped into a truck and just took off and went, and it worked out pretty good. We worked our way up to tier 2 level, um, under the prime contractors that had the big contracts with FEMA. So at one point, I had 600 guys employed in Florida. We were working. This is when there was like 7 hurricanes in like an 18-month period of time, and we worked 6 of those 7, and I had
Mhm.
600 guys on the ground, and that was kind of an experience that I don't want to ever live again. But
Sure.
it was great for about a 2-year period of time,
Right.
and long story short, made a boatload of money before the FEMA woke up and realized they were way overpaying for what we were doing. So came home and started talking to some people. I had time. I had a little bit of money, and sort of like you, I was kind of like kicked back and not really doing a whole lot. And started talking to some people who were doing other businesses, and somebody approached me with an idea to do the business I started about 15 years ago. And we launched that business, and timing was really great, and we had a great business model. And I tell my students this when I talk to them in class. I say, listen, if you can ever find a business model that has no employees, no accounts payable, no accounts receivable, and an 80% gross margin, you should do that
Yeah.
business.
You should jump on that.
Yeah. And I literally lucked into that situation.
Sure.
And of course, at that point, I'm a little bit older, and I'm thinking, this is it, right? This is what every entrepreneur looks for. Is
Right.
is the
Right.
it's the gold ring, the golden calf, whatever you want to call it. It's like, this is my ticket.
Yep.
And all I have to do is not screw this up,
Sure.
and I can ride this thing into the sunset. So it was great. I mean, we did. I don't know. Are we allowed to talk numbers here, Keith?
Yeah.
I,
Yeah.
I
Absolutely.
it was amazing to me. Okay, like our first year, we did $1 million worth of business. Now remember my margins, right?
Sure.
And I'm running this business off a laptop and a cell phone, and I'm outsourcing everything. But Second year we did 3 million. The third year we did 5 million. And we're sitting there and we're planning out the next 3 years, and 10 million is absolutely doable. I had
Sure.
sales reps working in 15 states and all of them contractors, right? So, but I had them out there, they're knocking on doors and selling stuff. And we were doing our job at cashing checks, and it was good. Life was good.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. And then a funny thing happened. The Great Recession.
Yep.
So, yeah. So we went through that, and well, we didn't go through it very well. Just like during COVID, I don't know how old your audience is, but if you know anything about the automotive industry, it gets impacted by these things, right? And the Great Recession pretty much wiped out the auto industry. We lost 90% of our customer base in about
Mm.
120 days.
Jeez.
And most of them were not coming back. They were not
Right.
recoverable. And these were
Yeah.
big franchise dealerships all over the country. So it was a mess. But we hung in there. There was a small core group of us that decided we were just going to tough it out because we didn't know any better. And so we hung in there, and it gradually started to recover. It never went back to the way it was.
Yeah.
But so those are just some of the ups and downs that you go through as an entrepreneur. And if I tell my students, I say, look, if you're an entrepreneur, you do it one time. If you're a serial entrepreneur, that means you do it over and over again, which means you're seriously brain damaged.
Yeah. You have problems.
Yeah, you've got a real
Yeah.
problem. We
Yeah.
need help because I just don't know what else to do if I'm not starting or running a business.
Yeah. Absolutely. I mean, my
So,
biggest problem is I don't want somebody telling me what to do.
well, I don't mind people telling me what to do. I don't mostly listen to them.
Yeah. True. True.
Maybe I should more.
Yeah.
But but it's like you know what it's like. You have the control to do what you want to do, right?
Yep.
If you want to do a podcast at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, you can
Do
sit
it.
down and do a podcast at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. And nobody's looking over your shoulder. Or nobody's telling you how much you're going to make or not make, or,
Yep.
how much vacation you're going to take or not
It's
take, or
freedom.
how much time
That's what I
you
call it.
spend
It's
with
freedom.
kids or what, you know, but you got to be willing to live with the downs as much as the
Yep.
ups, right?
100%.
So you got to have a pretty thick skin, I think. And I think what I see mostly is I talk to a lot of entrepreneurs now, like you do, or people who think they want to be an entrepreneur.
Yeah.
And, I tell them some of the ugly, and I've told you just about this much, but I tell them some of the ugly and they go, oh,
Yeah.
really? That
Yep.
can happen? I said, oh yeah. I said, have you had your car repossessed yet? Have you got a foreclosure notice on your house? Okay. Has your credit gone into the toilet so far that you can't get a plunger to get it back out?
Right.
Okay. So if you're not, and I'm not saying you have to, what I'm saying is, but you got to be willing to risk that and more to make it work sometimes. So
Yeah.
most people are risk averse.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think that's obviously fear is, I think, the number one thing that keeps people from jumping, pulling the trigger, jumping in with both feet. And so it's interesting. So have you ever started something as a side gig, or everything's just all in, all go?
I've always thought these were all side gigs, quite honestly. Because it was, when you start it, you never know, right?
Yeah, 100%.
You're all in. I mean, emotionally,
Yeah,
you're all in.
sure.
Financially, you're probably mostly all in. But you just never know. So I've always had plan B, plan C, and plan D.
Sure.
And sometimes I'll have 2 or 3 things going at the same time, just wondering which one is going to get traction.
Yep.
But yeah, it was always like, okay, we're going to do this for now. We're going to see how this plays out. And if this doesn't work real well, then we're going to go over here. But I'm always scanning the horizon, even now, and I'm not nearly as active entrepreneurially as I used to be. But even now, I'm always scanning the horizon. I'm always talking to people and trying to figure out, okay, would that work here? How would I do that here?
Yeah.
So,
yeah, I mean, that's how our brains work, right? Is like, you see a problem. Okay, is there a solution for it? Okay, can I turn that solution into money?
right.
And
Well,
whether
people
it's
pay
for me
that
or somebody
solution.
else, like, because again, I mean, I like to do it for myself, but you know me, I like to help other people as well. So it's like, hey, can you make money off of that solution? Is it possible?
Right. Yeah. Is there a demand for the solution, right?
Mhm.
Is there a demand and are people willing to, there's the bigger part, are people willing to pay for the solution?
Yeah.
Because sometimes you have an elegant solution
Yep.
and people
It's
think, oh, that's really cool. But then you tell them, well, it's going to cost X. And they go, whoa, we're real happy with the duct tape we got around it right
Yep.
now. Okay. So we'll just stay with the duct tape.
Yeah, I was talking to a group of students yesterday, and that came up. They had a brilliant business idea, and after walking them kind of down the road of okay, asking lots of questions, it's like okay, so does anybody else think it's brilliant and need said business idea? Like, do they need the solution? Because it sounds like what you're saying is I have this great idea, nobody wants it, but it's a great idea that so like I'm going to create the demand for it. I'm going to create the problem, and that's
Yeah. Well,
Mm,
we both go,
e
like, on one hand, because of the age thing, right? They're 20 something. You want to
yeah.
go, yeah, go do that,
Yeah, good
because
luck.
you're going to fail half a dozen times before
Sure,
you can figure this
sure.
out. So you don't want to discourage them too much because I really do want them to go out there and just kind of get bloody doing this
Sure.
because that's how you learn.
Yeah.
Those are the most important lessons. You and I talked about this other company that we've been talking about, and they've got what appears to be this really nice package solution, right?
Mhm.
Um, but you talk to them at length about this is great, but you realize you've created a solution for people who don't realize they have a real problem yet,
Yep.
even though we all know that they do.
Yeah, or
But
they
you're going to have to
could.
spend
They
all
could
this
have a
time and money
problem.
educating, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, and that's the thing. So, it's really expensive to educate a consumer that they have a problem, right?
Yep.
And especially if you're bootstrapping this and you don't have a whole lot of money, do you really want to spend all of your money educating the public? And because what likely will happen is you're going to educate the public and you're also going to educate a potential competitor. And then
Yeah,
the competitor has more money and they take your educated public that you have now educated as their customer, not yours. And you go out of
yeah,
business. And,
that's right.
and that's
Thank you
just a
very much
reality.
for spending all your time and money to educate my new customers.
Yep. Absolutely. So, I mean,
Yeah.
if you're going to do something like that, your runway has to be so long. You have to have so much cash ready to be deployed to get your runway to be long enough. Most people just don't have the stomach or the patience to do it. I mean, frankly, I wouldn't. I'm not patient enough to do any of that stuff. If it's not a problem that everybody already knows they have, I don't have anything to do with that. I don't
Right.
want to educate somebody.
I talk about the shiny widget all the time. People have this thing where they build this shiny widget and it's really cool because it's their idea. It's got
So,
bells
yeah.
and whistles and it flies and goes up and down and back and forth and goes in circles. Everybody's going to want one of these because it's really cool. It's shiny and it's got bells and whistles. So they spend all this time and money building all these shiny widgets and they open a store to sell these
Yeah.
shiny widgets figuratively, right? And nobody wants,
Yep.
so I've gotten onto this kick now where when I talk to people, I'm all about feasibility. Before you spend a dime or a whole lot of dimes, go find out if what you're doing is actually feasible.
Yeah.
Okay. Get to the point where you can make a go, no go decision and try to do that as low a cost as possible. Here's the challenge, in my opinion, and you can chip in on this, is that I think you just said it. People won't do the work.
Yeah.
I said, look, it is so easy now. When I got started 100 years ago, the internet was not around,
Yeah.
right? And you basically relied on word of mouth, who you knew and who they knew. And you went out, you talked to people, and that's how you gathered data. Now you and I can sit here. We don't even have to leave the house. We can pick up our phone, we can pick up a laptop, and within minutes, okay,
Yep.
especially with AI, within seconds,
Yep.
we can have more data that we can say grace over, and you still can't get the younger folks to go that far and do that much research. So it's like, I don't know what to do with them.
Yeah, no, I mean it's definitely a thing. I gave them all a hard time about not wanting to work. I was like, everybody wants to work from home and they want to get paid $100,000 a year and do nothing. I was like, which is fantastic. As somebody who sits at home and works from home and makes a good living. It's hard for me to like say, hey, no, you can't do this. But my gosh, I mean, I put 25 years into getting where I am, and they see it. And of course, they probably think I'm younger than I am.
Well, yeah. They don't look
But
at you like your grandfather.
yeah, I'm not a grandfather. Could be, like in theory. But I mean, the reality is I've got 25 years worth of really hard work and putting in the 100-hour weeks, the 80, 90, 100-hour weeks to get to where
Yeah.
I am. And they just want it. They just give it to me. Like, why can't I have
Uh,
that?
yeah. Or because you've done as much as you've done, you can look at something and go, yeah,
Yeah.
I don't think that's really great. Right. And
Yep.
you might want to consider pivoting off of that.
Yeah.
And they don't understand because it's their first thing.
Right.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, it's the sniff test, right? Does it pass the sniff test? I mean, I feel like, and there's people that are way better at this than I am. Let's be very clear. I'm not great. I don't even know that I'm good. I just have done it a bunch. But I can sniff at least for my stomach, for what I'm willing to invest in or, help other people and encourage other people to invest in. I can sniff something and like that. Yes, this has legs for you or for me potentially, or hey, that's probably not a good idea. Like, hey, I want to go start a restaurant. I have no money. I've got no money. I'm not a chef, but I have this really cool idea. Okay, so it's going to cost you $250,000. The margins are razor thin. Most of them go out of business within the first 8 months. Sounds like a brilliant plan. Go for it. Like, no, that doesn't pass the sniff test. Don't do that. Don't do that at all.
Right. Yeah. And then they want to know, where can I get money?
Right. Yeah.
You know, it's funny after the idea, the conversation turns to, okay, can you help me find money? And I'm going,
No.
no,
Mm-mm.
nobody gives money to startups. Nobody.
No,
Okay.
and they hear about these angel investors out in California that, invest in things that become Google and, Tesla and all these things, all the AI stuff, right? Okay, those are great. That's wonderful. If you have an idea like that, yes, you can get money, but you know what you have to do to get money for those? You work your butt off. Those people have to hustle so much to get money, to find investors, and then you're giving away large chunks of your business to
Right.
people who at some point could try to force you out of said business, right?
Yeah.
So, I mean, are you really trying to do some tech startup? But like most people aren't trying to do a tech startup. They're trying to do the widget, right? They're trying to build a widget. They're trying like to me, inventing stuff is the hardest thing to do
Mhm.
because manufacturing, like all the research and development and prototype after prototype after prototype, and the investment into that to then figure out, okay, can I actually sell this?
Right.
It's a lot,
Yeah.
man.
To get to the point where you've got a saleable product,
Mm-hmm.
especially if, like you said, if it's a manufactured product and you're not the manufacturer
Exactly.
and you don't have a bank account that will, support you for the next 18 to 24 months while you vet this thing out,
Yep.
just stop because, the chances of
It's
success at
hard.
the end of that are you can't even calculate them. They're so small. I mean, it's, but God bless them. I just, go, yeah, fly,
Yeah.
uh, because you never want to discourage them from chasing whatever it is they want to chase. But if they're going to ask you, what do you think? Okay, well, are you sure you want me to tell you what I think?
Yeah.
Um,
Well,
so,
and that's a
but
conversation that you have to have with people who, come and ask for, advice is, do you really want advice? Are you looking for me to just tell you that you have a good idea or do you want the actual truth? Because if you're looking for me to just tell you have a good idea, you got the wrong guy. Like, I'm going to shoot it straight with you, period. And so if you're just wanting affirmation in your decisions, you have to find someone else for that.
and you and I are still doing this. You remember the idea on my whiteboard that I sat on for 4 years trying to figure out how to make work, and then you and I met, and I started bouncing this off you, and you got a little experience in that industry. So I said, "What about this? What about this?" And this is an industry that I've got 15 years worth of deep knowledge in,
Yep.
right? And I sat on this idea for 4 years because I just couldn't figure out how to make it work. And then I met you, and I thought, well, let's try it, and we did. And what happened, Keith?
No go.
It was a no-go.
No
It was like
go.
we thought we
There's
had
no
all
reason
the
it
right
shouldn't work.
pieces. Yeah, yeah. It was like, and here's the scary part, that most people, this is where it sucks people in. Remember the first beta test we did?
Oh yeah.
And we got the results back and we
It
were
was
like,
fantastic. Oh my gosh, here we go.
whoa. I felt like, here we go again,
Yep.
something home run.
Yep.
And then of
Fake
course,
news. Fake news. As it turns out, that was fake. It was a lie.
yeah, yeah. So, but and here's what it cost us. It cost us a little bit of money to
Yep.
run the test.
Mhm.
Okay. But we did a lot of research on the front end of that, and we did research along the way. And now we're not dumping any more money into it because
Yeah.
we haven't figured it out.
Yeah.
And it may not be there to be figured out.
Right. Exactly. It might just not work, and that's okay. Right. And that's the big thing for anybody who's watching this, listening to this. You have to be okay with failing. If it's obvious, like in our situation here, it's obvious that as it sits right now, it is not going to work. There's no reason for you to put more money into it, for me to put more money into it, for me to have my team put a ton of time into this. Not right now. It's a no-go as it sits right now. And to continue just to throw money after it, because I've done it before, like trying to throw enough cash at it to get it to come back.
Yep.
Don't do it. If once
It's
you
a
realize
life
it's a
support.
failure,
You're
let it
pushing on the
die.
chest, right? You're
Yeah.
trying to give it CPR.
And I was talking to some people the other day that talked about, like, part of the problem is entrepreneurs, especially starting out, is your entire identity is wrapped up in this, with the widget, in the business, in the service, whatever it is, right? And when that happens, you can't let it die, because that's a piece of you dying, right? Or it's your entire identity dying, is what you feel
Yeah.
like.
Yeah. I
And
mean, it's your baby, right? It's your
right,
baby.
right.
And I've been there. I mean, I've been there a lot, and I rode those ponies right into the ground, and it was just like, stop, just stop. So I
Yeah.
understand. I'm a slow learner too.
I did it one time and I lost. I mean, I was to the point where I was like, oh my gosh, I'm gonna have to live off credit cards. I have to go get a job. For the first time in my adult life, I had to go get a job, a job, that 3-letter word. It was
Ah,
terrible. It was awful. I mean,
poor baby.
luckily it worked out. The job I got was with a fantastic owner. And he basically let me just run the business like it was my business. So it worked out really well. But
Yeah.
God, it was terrible. The idea of going and getting a job was awful. But yeah, it's because I wrote it too far. Just throw more money, it'll solve the problem.
That's it. Well, you want it so bad.
Mhm.
You want it to work, or you've seen it. Well, this is the worst part. It works,
Yep,
and then it stops working,
yep,
right? And then you're pumping money and time and money and time, and
yeah.
and it's still not getting traction.
Oh yeah, no, 100%, 100%.
So
So, what's the biggest lesson or biggest thing that you think you could impart on somebody who is thinking about becoming an entrepreneur? Like, do you wish you would have known?
we don't. That's not a podcast. That's a series.
Right, absolutely. He's like, do you have 3
What do I
hours?
wish I had known? Look, when I was younger, okay, many years ago, I thought entrepreneurs were born
Mm,
because you either had the DNA or you didn't,
sure.
right? And I believed that for years. I don't believe that anymore because I believe you can teach people skills. But what you can't teach people is to become more or less risk averse. I think that's in you, right? Because there's a point where you go, I'll do this, but I won't do that.
Yeah.
Okay. So and that's okay. Set your boundaries, right?
Absolutely.
Um, Probably the one thing, if there was just one thing, and there never is, that if I could go be me now, right? Turn back the hands of time, get into my DeLorean and fly back. Um, uh, I would get better at doing what I'm teaching now, which is feasibility and no-go decisions before you spend a lot of money and a lot of time chasing something where the market is not well defined, where your margins are not well defined. Do not get into, and I've done this more times than I can tell you, don't get into a business where you're competing on price.
Yep.
Ever.
Yep.
Unless there's only one exception to that rule. If you own the supply chain
Sure.
all the way
Top to
down,
bottom. Yeah.
then fine, you can compete on price. If you don't own the complete supply chain, somebody with deeper pockets can always wipe you out.
Yep.
Okay. Because they could, Look, people say, "Oh yeah, we're just like them, but we're going to sell for lower." No, you're not.
Yeah.
Okay, not for very long.
It's
So
interesting because every time I consult with somebody to help set up a business and get them going, I always tell them, "You're not gonna compete on price. You're going to be the most expensive in town. You're going to, and you're gonna offer a better service. You're gonna show up when you say you're gonna show up. You're gonna do a better job. The widget's gonna be the best, whatever it is, but you are going to be, if not the highest, you're gonna be at the top 10%, period. End of story. Because you don't want to compete with these people down here. One, like
no,
you don't want to be seen as those people are seen in the community, in the industry, whatever it is, right? Because those people are not looked upon highly most times, right?
well, here, I'll put a real fine point on that. When I was chasing hurricanes, right? And we were, and of course, hurricanes take off a lot of roofs, right?
Sure.
So what would happen is hurricane would come in, you'd come in and do the disaster recovery work, and then there'd be all the reconstruction work afterwards. And because this is happening on the coast, you know, it's a lot of roofs. So
Yep.
you could in look. So I had a lot of roofers. Okay,
Yeah.
I was a roofer as a matter. But when we were working in Florida, where this is going, there actually is a point. When we were working in Florida, to be a general contractor in the state of Florida, and to be able to do any type of contracting, including roofs, remodels, new construction, you have to be licensed by the state. And I'm talking years ago, the license requirements were, first of all, there was a year's worth of classwork that you had, state
Wow.
approved coursework you had to take. You had to sit for a test. You had to put up $1 million bond. Okay. And you had to cover, I think it was $5 or $10 million worth of liability insurance
Wow.
before you ever opened the door. Because if they caught you, it was a felony and you went to
Ooh,
prison.
jeez.
Okay. They were serious in
No
Florida. They still
joke.
are. So what happens after a hurricane comes, though, is the feds come in
Hmm.
and they override
They
state
say, let's
law.
go
And you had roofers coming in from
everywhere. Yeah.
Texas, right? Oklahoma, California, Colorado,
Sure.
Ohio, wherever. Look, if you had a pickup truck and a ladder, you were a roofer,
Right.
right? That's it.
Yeah.
That's all, and that's all you needed to do. Now, imagine you're the general contractor, or you're the roofing contractor in Florida who's got all of this insurance and all of these licensing requirements. And here comes Doug with 600 bozos and a pickup truck and some ladders, and we're competing against you.
Right.
Okay. We have no cost in this,
Yeah.
right? And you're
Yeah.
sitting there on millions of dollars worth of insurance premiums and risk, right? So it was like, oh, there could have been a civil war, I think, at that point.
Sure. Sure.
But that's what you're competing against. So
Yeah.
I can come in and compete low cost when I've got the feds, clamping down the laws. But in a free market,
Yeah.
I could never compete against those guys.
No, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. No, I mean, pricing is, I don't know. Also, I just don't want to work so hard for not very much money. Just it seems like a bad idea. Seems like just do a much better job so they want to hire you and your quality's better and everything's better about it. The entire experience is better and charge more.
And here's what will happen. And you've seen this, and I've seen it. I'll pay more.
Yeah, 100%.
I'll pay more for service.
Yep.
And good workmanship, right?
Yep.
Pride in your own, pride in whatever it is you do, your workmanship, and up over the top service. I do that when I go to a restaurant, Keith. Here's kind of my standard, and this gets back to I spent some time in the hospitality industry, right? So I had this like thing about service at restaurants and right bars or whatever you want to go to, but the service level, right? So I go to, and my mentality is I walk in, you're automatically getting the 20% tip on whatever I do.
Yep.
That can go up or down depending on you. If I get good service, it goes up. If I get bad service, it goes down. And so I'm willing to pay more
Sure.
for service,
Yeah.
for good service. It doesn't have to
Absolutely.
be like
You're world class.
over the
Yeah.
decent service, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, a perfect example is Annabelle had to go to the orthodontist today, find out she needs braces, right?
Mm.
So the place that we went, I'm sure is probably the most expensive in Corpus Christi. But at the end of the day, it's going to be over a 2-year period. It's probably going to be $1,000 more. The service is so good. Like, I mean, they make it so easy. Like the technology they use makes it so like you don't even have to go into the orthodontist. You have a thing that you take a picture with your phone. You Bluetooth it to your phone. You do a picture at home. You send it to them, and they tell you, oh, she needs to come in for an adjustment or not. I'll pay the extra $1,000 over 2 years. An extra $1,000, sure. Because again,
Yeah,
the
think about
service level is
time back and
here.
forth.
Yeah. I mean, plus just like talking to them and just like the service level is up here compared to everybody else we talk to. It's like, I mean, I'm not trying to get the bargain basement. It's her mouth. Also, like this has to last her forever. This is hopefully the last set of teeth she's gonna have. Um,
Yep.
so it's just, I mean, I'll pay for the service absolutely all day, every day.
Yep. Yep. And I think maybe that comes with age now,
Yeah, 100%.
but but and trust me, when I had 5 kids at home, we were doing how cheap can we do this, right?
Sure.
But at some point you go, wait a minute, it is worth it to pay a little bit more today, so you don't have to keep going back and having it
Yep.
redone, whatever it is.
Yeah,
right?
whatever it is, right? Your
I don't care if you're working on my appliances, right?
appliances, your car, your whatever, right? I mean,
Oh
it's all the
God,
same.
don't get me started. Yeah.
Yeah.
How about dry cleaners? Don't get me started on dry cleaners. So
Doug and his Corpus dry cleaners. I love it. Awesome. Well, if there's anything else, share it with us. If not, I mean, this has been a lot. It's
okay.
been awesome.
Well, maybe you can get a couple of minutes out of there. It'll be a half of a podcast. What's a half of a podcast?
Yeah. No, it's good. It's really good. So hey, I appreciate you coming on.
Hey,
Man.
likewise, Keith. Thanks for having me on. And I owe you lunch still. So not for
Absolutely.
this, but I still owe you lunch.
All right, that's a wrap for today's episode. Your next step, take what you've learned today and put it into action. Now, if this episode gave you something to think about, do me a favor and leave a review, or share it with someone you think needs to hear it. And if you have any thoughts, let's continue this discussion. You can find us on social media, Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. Let's simplify entrepreneurship together. We'll see you on the next one.